A moment ago, you were crowing about the fact that you treated children so well, and yet we find tens of thousands of children who are forced to work as slaves because of your policies, and you turn around and blame a prior administration. Mr. Secretary, this is par for the course for you. You do it every time you appear before this committee. You do it every time you appear before Congress. I, for one, am sick and tired of it, and thousands of children are in physical danger because of what you are doing. You should have resigned long ago. And if you cannot change course, you should be removed from office. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here. Let's talk about the surge in child smuggling and child exploitation that is happening on your watch. Do you know the number of unaccompanied children who have come across the border on your watch?
Senator, I don't have that number at my disposal, but I can assure you that we are incredibly dedicated to the safety and security of those children.
Well, it doesn't appear so based on what we're reading today in the New York Times, what we're reading and seeing from numbers from your own office. The answer to my question, by the way, is 345,807. That's the number of unaccompanied children who have come across the border on your watch. Do you know what's happening to these children? Have you seen this report from the New York Times? Alone and exploited migrant children work brutal jobs across the United States. Have you seen this?
Senator, I haven't. Let me share with you what we are doing.
Have you seen these numbers? These are reports of trafficking and abuse of migrant children. You can see a massive surge that begins to happen when? Oh, when you come to office in 2021. Huge surge, reports of trafficking, reports of neglect and abuse. Let's just look at a few of the details. This is absolutely unbelievable. I can't believe this happens in the United States of America in this day and age. This is from the New York Times. Thousands of children have ended up in punishing jobs across the country, working overnight in slaughterhouses, replacing roofs, operating machinery in factories, all in violation of child labor laws. For example, there's a young girl named Carolina from Guatemala. She is 15 years old. What does she do? She packages Cheerios overnight at a factory. She says, sometimes I get tired and I feel sick. The times goes on, her stomach often hurt. She wasn't sure if that was because of a lack of sleep or the stress of the incessant roar of the machines or her own worry. The times goes on, far from home, many of these children are under intense pressure to earn money. They have to send cash back home to their families while often being in debt to their sponsors, quote unquote. For what? For smuggling fees, rent, and living expenses. One individual interviewed by the Times said this, I'm still quoting, "It's the new child labor. You're taking children from another country and putting them into indentured servitude." I could go on and on. The Times details over a multi-month investigation, kid after kid, child after child, one 13-year-old forced to wash hotel sheets in Virginia, kids running milking machines in Vermont, delivering meals in New York City, scrubbing dishes late at night, all in violation of our country's laws, all facilitated by your policies. Are you proud of this record?
Senator, the horrific exploitation of children is something that we do not condone. You are incorrectly attributing it to our policies. Let me share with you.
Wait a minute. It began, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. It began, this massive surge began when you came to office. In your first year in office, there was a 342% surge of unaccompanied children across the border. You know, CBS reported that, I'm going to quote them now, Mr. Biden's election, as well as policy changes announced by his administration, those would be your changes, led smugglers to tell migrant youth they had a better chance of being allowed to stay in the United States than they had under Trump. Meanwhile, you've lost track of tens of thousands of them. The Times also reviewed data that showed the government couldn't reach more than 85,000 of these children who they just turned over into the hands of smugglers of these are modern day slave traders. And you're just giving these children to them. What is going on? Why are you doing this?
Senator, of course, there are a number of factual inaccuracies in your question, but let me address two lines of effort that we have to combat the scourge of exploitation.
Why don't we just start with why you enabled it? Can we just start with that? Why is it that you have enabled 345,000 children to be smuggled across this border and then sent into the hands of modern-day slave traders. In 2021, you made the decision to change Title 42 to allow unaccompanied children to come into the United States and then to be sent into the interior of the country. Under the last administration, children were reunited with their families in their home country. You changed that, and as soon as you changed it, the numbers exploded. That is your responsibility.
Quite a number of false statements, Senator.
What is false about that statement?
So if I can state what I've been trying to state, one of the significant policy decisions that we have made is to focus our worksite enforcement investigative efforts, our criminal investigative efforts on unscrupulous employers that exploit individuals because of their vulnerabilities, and that includes underage workers.
That is not what the New York Times investigation found. Mr. Chairman, I just ask at this point, I'd like to enter into the record the New York Times article, as migrant children were put to work, U.S. ignored warnings. This is from April 17th, 2023. This is this morning. And I'd also like to enter into the record the New York Times article, alone and exploited migrant children work brutal jobs across the U.S. This is from February 25th, 2023. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What these articles show, Mr. Secretary, is that the administration has done nothing but facilitate this crisis. You changed Title 42. You allowed hundreds of thousands of migrant children to come across the border, and then you made it worse. When they became a political crisis for you, when that huge surge of kids across the border because you changed Title 42, when it became an optics crisis, what did you do? You began pressuring officials and agencies to skip the vetting process and get these kids out as soon as possible to sponsors who weren't vetted. Here's the Times again. As shelters filled with children, the administration began loosening vetting restrictions and urging case managers to speed the process along. You have at every stage facilitated this modern-day indentured servitude of minor children. Why should you not be impeached for this?
Senator, I look forward to discussing this issue further because you are misstating the facts so terribly.
I'm reading you the facts from articles in the news, and your usual modus operandi is what you're doing again today, which is just to deny. Why have you permitted 345,000 children to come into this country unaccompanied? Why have you permitted thousands of them to be abused and exploited?
Senator, what we do is we enforce the law. But let me just say this.
You're not.
It is stunning to me, stunning, to hear you say that the prior administration reunited children with their parents.
Oh, I see. So this is their fault? But you're not going to take any responsibility for the indentured servitude and exploitation of children that is happening on your watch. A moment ago, you were crowing about the fact that you treated children so well, and yet we find tens of thousands of children who are forced to work as slaves because of your policies, and you turn around and blame a prior administration. Mr. Secretary, this is par for the course for you. You do it every time you appear before this committee. You do it every time you appear before Congress. I, for one, am sick and tired of it. Thousands of children are in physical danger because of what you are doing. You should have resigned long ago. And if you cannot change course, you should be removed from office. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, you didn't think the border crisis was bad enough that now we're going to have an app that allows illegals to schedule their appointments and come and be admitted to this country?
Senator, you're mischaracterizing the use of the application.
So rather than building a wall, Mr. Secretary, you have built Ticketmaster for illegal immigrants.
You are, Senator, you are conflating programs. So if I can, I will get you the precise.
I'm reading to you from public reports about how your own app works. Did you contract with a tech firm to develop it?
We have seen an approximately 95% decrease.
Did you contract with a tech firm to develop it? Yes or no? But you don't know any of the details. I plead exhaustion, Mr. Secretary. You have exhausted me. You have exhausted this panel. You have exhausted the patience of the American people. You should resign. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. Let me start with what I hope is a simple question. Do we need to have more or fewer people coming to our southern border?
Senator, we are working on diminishing the number of people whom we encounter at our southern border because of the challenge it presents. We're trying to build lawful, safe, and orderly pathways to accomplish that.
Okay, fewer. So we need to have fewer, which means we need to roll back incentives to come. So I would have thought that would have been the answer. Let's talk about what you're doing, though. In January of this year, you rolled out a new phone app called CBP One, an app for a cell phone. I've got a picture of it behind me here. This phone app allows, and I'm going to quote from your own fact sheet, it allows, and I quote, non-citizens without appropriate documents for admission to schedule an appointment to come to the border. They can now go on their phone and schedule a time to come to the border and then be admitted. And you identified 7 separate border points of entry where they could come. 5 of them in Texas, 2 of them in California, 1 in Arizona. It's like a concierge service for illegal immigrants. My question is, you didn't think the border crisis was bad enough that now we're going to have an app that allows illegals to schedule their appointments and come and be admitted to this country?
Senator, you're mischaracterizing the use of the application. Let me explain it to you. We are currently enforcing the public health order of Title 42, and I know you're very familiar with it. There is a process for individuals who claim an exception to the Title 42 expulsion authority because of an acute medical condition.
Well, let's talk about this app.
If I may finish, an urgent humanitarian reason. So instead of them coming in between the ports of entry to claim that urgent medical condition, that extraordinarily acute humanitarian cause, we allow a limited number to arrive at our ports of entry and seek the emergency relief that they need.
Schedule, you allow them, let's be particular about what you do.
And I should say that the CBP One app was not unveiled for the first time on January 5th of this year.
Oh, no, but you changed it. You made it available on January 5th to the illegals themselves. You don't have to be a lawyer to use it. You don't have to be a member of a non-governmental organization. Anybody can download the app and use it on their phone. And for the first time, you allowed them to schedule appointments. Now, let's talk about what actually happens when they come to the border. It's interesting. You characterized this when you rolled it out as an application for applying for asylum. But nowhere on the app do you actually require the illegal migrants to apply for asylum or to claim asylum or anything about asylum. And in fact, when they then get to the border, you don't ask them questions, you don't do interviews, you just release them. Here's the Texas Monthly, not a notable conservative outlet, who reports, and I quote, "At no point does the app ask users, are you seeking asylum? Those arriving for the CBP One appointments are given no interviews, asked no questions about vulnerabilities that they may or may not have listed in the app or about why they're coming to the United States. They're simply released into the country," end quote. So rather than building a wall, Mr. Secretary, you have built Ticketmaster for illegal immigrants.
You are, Senator, you are conflating programs. Let me explain
Well, just respond to this. Is it true that they are given no interviews, asked no questions, and simply released into the country?
Let me explain to you what we announced on January 5th.
No, I want you to explain to me what's happening. I know what you announced. I read it to you.
So I will explain to you what is happening.
Are they given interviews? Let's start with that. Are they given interviews?
We were previously experiencing
That's starting to sound like a no. Well, let's just hone in here. Mr. Secretary, my time is very limited. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to drive to some clarity here.
But Senator,
the Texas Monthly has reported that once illegal immigrants go on their phone and reserve their time to come to the border, once they use your concierge service that you've created for them, when they come, they are given no interviews. They are asked no questions about any vulnerabilities. They are simply released into the country. Is that happening?
Senator, you are mistaken. And if I may explain.
Are they given interviews?
If I may explain, individuals who seek parole under our January 5th program for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans are screened and vetted before they arrive at our border.
Wait a minute. No, they go on the phone and they just reserve a time, and then they show up and they're given nothing. Listen to this. Even immigration advocates are amazed about this. Here, also from the Texas Monthly. Here's one immigration advocate whose first name is Orta, she says, that's the crazy part. Nothing in this new program requires you to actually seek asylum. Somehow, we've decided to punish those who arrive at the border without the app, who may be seeking asylum, but we just let in anybody who may or may not have any particular reason to seek asylum, so long as they've made an appointment on your Ticketmaster app. This seems crazy to me.
Senator, it's a complete mischaracterization of the program that we announced and are implementing.
So how many people have used the app then?
You are referring to. So if I can explain.
How many people have used the app?
So we had a significant surge of Cubans.
How many people have used the app?
Nicaraguans and Venezuelans.
Mr. Secretary, you're here to answer my questions. How many people have used the app?
Tens of thousands have sought to make an appointment at the port of entry under our parole program.
Okay, good. How many have been admitted without an interview at the border?
You are, again, inserting a fact that does not belong in your question. So if I can, I will get you the precise.
I'm reading to you from public reports about how your own app works. You're just blanket denying. Actually, you're not quite denying it. You're saying that maybe we don't understand. Apparently, I don't understand. Texas Monthly doesn't understand. Immigration advocates don't understand. You're the only one who understands, yet you won't answer my question. How much did this cost to develop, by the way?
Senator, I don't have the cost, but let me share with you a critical
Well, will you
fact.
get it for us?
Let me share with you a critical
Will you
fact.
get us the cost of to develop this app?
Happily.
Did you contract with a tech firm to develop it?
Senator, we have seen approximately.
Did you contract with a tech firm to develop it?
We have seen an approximately
for heaven's sake.
95% decrease.
Did you contract with a tech firm to develop it? Yes or no?
Senator, this was led by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, our technical experts within the agency, and I certainly will get an answer to your question whether outside consultants were utilized
you don't
in the
know.
development process.
You don't know.
May I explain to you, since you have a misunderstanding of the program, what it is and the impact, the positive impact it has had on encounters of these four populations in between.
I just
ports of
want to know
entry.
why it is that you are allowing people to come to this border to make appointments, to not be interviewed, and then how many have just been released? Is it true, by the way, as the Texas Monthly reports, that they're simply released into the country on official parole? And get this, they're not given, according to their reporting, any kind of follow-up. Their court dates are in immigration courts, Texas Monthly reports, not even necessarily asylum trials. They're often general deportation hearings where defendants can make arguments for remaining in the country. Is that true?
That is a completely mistaken understanding of how the immigration process works. That language is completely confusing and erroneous.
It is confusing. What's confusing is why anybody would think that an app like this to allow illegal immigrants to literally reserve a time to come to the border and then be ushered in without an interview, without follow-up, without tracking is stunning. It's absolutely stunning. Let me ask my very short time remaining something else about Chinese nationals. I've only got a minute left.
That is false.
Let me ask you about the Chinese nationals who we all saw coming over the border, busloads of them, and then being released in the American interior. What's the percentage increase of Chinese nationals who crossed the border this year, Mr. Secretary? Let's just focus on maybe the Rio Grande Valley sector.
The number of Chinese nationals encountered at our southern border has increased significally.
Do you know how much?
I don't have the precise percentage.
I do. It's 900% just in the Rio Grande Valley sector. Are any of these people who came in this bus, these Chinese nationals, members of the Chinese Communist Party?
Senator, if an individual presents a national security or public safety threat, we detain them during the pendency.
But that's not what I asked. I asked if they're members of the CCP.
During the pendency of their removal proceedings.
Are any of these individuals members of the CCP?
So
I think there's about 70 who came on this bus.
If indeed they are determined to be a national security threat or a threat to public safety, we detain them pending their removal proceedings.
Were any of these individuals detained, or were they released into the interior of the country?
I don't have awareness of that particular group of individuals.
And so you don't know if any of them were members of the CCP? Or actually, you do know, you just won't say.
I don't know from the photograph, Senator, to whom.
But surely you know about the folks who, you've read this report, you're the Secretary of Homeland Security, you're aware of these individuals. Were any of them members of the Chinese Communist Party coming into this country?
Senator, you're providing me with a group of individuals without names, identities, or...
So you're not familiar with this incident that was widely reported on at the southern border? Don't you think it's strange that we have busloads of Chinese nationals coming across our southern border? I'm asking you from a hostile country, I'm asking you if they're members of the Chinese Communist Party, and you don't know, apparently, you won't say.
We are very focused on all things with respect to the People's Republic of
But
China.
you don't know any of the details. I plead exhaustion, Mr. Secretary. You have exhausted me, you have exhausted this panel, you have exhausted the patience of the American people. You should resign.